Hey, what's up, guys? This is Mark. I'm back to talk about fantasy football again. So in this video, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to talk about starting to prepare for week one, some of the start sits, and then I'm going to talk about some of the news that's been going on in the NFL today, kind of to get you prepared for this week. And so we'll go from there and kind of go through what's going on. So, but first of all, before I get into start sits, I'm going to kind of preview basically what I'm going to do. So for start sits, typically what I see is that a lot of people when they do the fantasy football shows or whatever is they go game by game, who to start, who to sit among that. I understand the value of that and seeing it game to game, but I personally like to see it more as a comparative effort because you're looking at all these games and they're saying, start this person, start this person, start this person. But if you have all three of them, then you don't know how to pick and choose between them. So I'm going to kind of do things a little differently and then go through sample rosters in some of these leagues that I'm in. So then that way you can kind of see who I would start and sit among that group as a comparative effort. And basically, if you want your decisions to be announced on the show, then comment below and I will try to include them in the next video that I do before the games actually start on Sunday. And I'll get into a little more detail with that. But first of all, some news that's been going on. And the big news that has taken over the NFL is once again a Darth Helmet episode where he's literally gone off the rails again. He's gone into ludicrous speed this time. And now he's supposedly going to get suspended by the Raiders because he tried to punch the GM or some nonsense. So as I've been saying, I really hope you didn't draft Antonio Brown because I was avoiding that guy like a 10-foot pole, with a 10-foot pole, basically, just an absolute waste of a draft pick. But I'm telling you, if you want to get a lot of value though, now you want to try to see if you could trade for Antonio Brown if you already drafted. And this is why I'm saying this stuff because I do not like Darth Helmet. I think he is an absolute diva. I think he's basically lost his mind since he's gotten all this money and now on a new team. But there's no denying that this guy has the potential to be the best. This guy has before been one of the best fantasy football players of the last decade. And if he reverts anywhere near that form, especially on an offense like that doesn't have a lot of potential, or even if he goes to another team like they're supposedly talking about, you could get a ton of value for him now when there's a lot of questions of when or if he's even going to play at all this season. So so basically this is why there's a difference you have to understand between drafting Antonio Brown in the second or third round and then potentially trading him depending on what that owner that has him thinks of Antonio Brown right now, trying to trade for him for certain players. You could basically give an offer for a guy that's kind of like a receiver that's got some question marks about him. I'm trying to think of some off the top of my head, but maybe somebody that's there's questions of if he could be a number one receiver, maybe Christian Kirk or DJ Moore or something like that. And then depending on where that owner is on Antonio Brown right now, you might actually be able to get him for one of those players. And yes, you could be losing a flex position for Antonio Brown. And yes, you might run the risk that he might not play the whole season. But this is one of the best ways right now that you can get a guy that could potentially be a top 5 fantasy asset if, let's say, that this gets forgotten about. He comes back week 2 and then he takes off the rest of the season. And so now is the time to pounce on Antonio Brown. Talk to those owners and see what their interest in him is. You might be able to get a lot of value for it. So that's my big takeaway from that news. We also had our first game today. It was the Packers and the Bears, and here's a couple takeaways from that. So first of all, if you own Davante Adams or if you drafted Aaron Jones, I'm sorry, but they did not have a good game. Davante Adams in standard leagues, I think, only put up probably about 3 points. And then Aaron Jones was even worse than that. So, but it's not over for those guys because you have to understand they're playing the Bears. And in fact that, if you have them, don't give up on them now. People are going to probably be trying to trade for them, knowing that they had off games against the Bears. And in fact, if you see them on other owners that are trying to sell you Aaron Jones, like buy into him, because this is that the tough matchup where they're playing at Chicago. They're going to have some better matchups throughout the season that I think Aaron Jones could excel at. And Davante Adams, if you could get him, that would be excellent value because there's a lot of people that still don't really know who he is very well, which is a shame. But offense that I'm concerned about, though, is Chicago. Like, they did not look good. Green Bay is not a team that's known for its defense, although I think that could change because their defense did look decent today. But Mitch Trubisky looked bad. The running back core looked like an absolute mess. The receiving core, which I've never been high on, nobody really stood out except for Tariq Cohen and Allen Robinson, too, to some degree. But, like what happened to Trey Burton? David Montgomery didn't really do much with his opportunity. There's so many things with Chicago's offense that just looks very concerning to me right now. But the thing that I would want to try to do personally is with that offense is if you're gonna do anything with any of those players, sell Tariq Cohen if you can. I think you could get a lot of value out of him because he had 8 catches, but then he also didn't even get an attempt rushing the ball. This guy is supposed to be a one of their better third down options, but he wasn't even really being given the ball to run it at all. So that's very concerning to me. I would try to sell him, especially if you're in PPR, because that he put up 12 points, but 8 of it came off of his 8 receptions if you're in a full PPR league. So I would try to see if I could take advantage of that now while you can, because that offense just looks very murky in general. And then my other big takeaway is that, and I've been saying this endless amount of times on this show, but this is why you don't take Aaron Rodgers in the first round of drafts. Is that game he had today, he had 1 touchdown, 203 yards, and he got sacked 5 times, which, yes, he's playing the Bears, but, they're not spectacular numbers anyway. So it's I don't know why you would spend a draft pick on a guy that high. It's just concerning to me. But then again, it's another guy that you might be able to buy low on because of that game, if you're interested in him. But I personally would kind of still stay away from Aaron Rodgers. But anyway, so that's the news. Now I'm going to get into some start sits, and I'm going to try to see if I can do this in about 30 minutes. I'm going to go through some standard rosters first for the first half, and then in the second half, I'm going to switch over to some PPR rosters. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about, first I'm going to go through the skill position players like wide receivers, running backs, flex, and then I'll talk about those in standard versus PPR, and then at the very end I'll talk about some general stream guys. Because for the most part, if you have a quarterback, I wouldn't recommend sitting a quarterback because they're playing a tough defense. Patrick Mahomes against Jacksonville, I would still start Patrick Mahomes because you have a lot of value there. So I'm going to go through the guys and the QBs, the tight ends, the defenses that they're already kind of on the bubble anyway of whether or not they should be rostered. And especially if you're going with the stream approach because you took a late quarterback or a late tight end or something along that lines, then these are people that I would consider for this week. And so let's go forward. So on this sample roster right here, the 2 running backs are James Conner and Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones didn't play well, but I think that wasn't a bad start necessarily just because he didn't know that. Then he's got a flex of Duke Johnson. Other running backs include Rashad Penny, Darrell Henderson, Devin Singletary, Jalen Samuels, and Chris Thompson. So that's a big collection of running backs there. But who would I start and sit? You obviously want to start James Conner there because, yes, he's playing New England, but James Conner is going to be the feature back on that team. So you would want to roll with your guns, especially since you took that guy probably in the second or first round even. So you start James Conner, and then at the flex position you have a competition between Duke Johnson. If you want to include one of those other receivers, you can, like Dede Westbrook or Adam Humphries, you can do that. But Duke Johnson, Rashad Penny, Darrell Henderson, Devin Singletary are the options. So, or Chris Thompson, even if you want to go there. But personally, in that case, I would go with Duke Johnson because they're playing New Orleans. I think Duke Johnson is a good play. there against them. Another good play I would consider is Devin Singletary playing the Jets. But personally, like, he's a rookie, so I still don't know where he's going to be. I'd rather go with a guy that's more experienced, like Duke Johnson. Rashad Penny, I don't know about that because he's playing the Bengals, but he's also splitting touches with Chris Carson potentially. I don't know how much of a workload he's going to get in his first game. See how things go there. Same thing with Darrell Henderson and the Rams, especially Todd Gurley at the gate. Looks like he's going to be good to go for now. Chris Thompson, just wait on that as well. See what Washington does with this new running back core featuring Darius Geis. Receivers. So Julio Jones, Kenny Golladay at the two receiver positions. Dede Westbrook and Adam Humphries at the other two receivers. So which two of the four do you start? And those ones are pretty straightforward to me. You start Julio Jones because, again, like elite receiver, you have to put him out there anytime you can. Don't ever sit Julio Jones, even if he's got a matchup against Jacksonville or something. Kenny Golladay, and then either him or Dede Westbrook. And the thing I would say there is that Kenny Golladay is that's a tough one because Dede Westbrook is playing Kansas City. But I don't know what Nick Foles is going to do in that offense yet. Supposedly has a good rapport with Dede Westbrook already, but I would rather see how things go between Stafford and Golladay, a more experienced player, and connection that's already been together for a few years, going up against a defense that's going to be without Patrick Peterson. I would rather start Kenny Golladay than Dede Westbrook there. Adam Humphries I would not start in that situation over those two, but I don't think he's a bad play because he could be one of their best receivers as well. So let's move to another sample collection. And again, like, post the comparisons that you want to see, and I will talk about those as well. So this next team right here, this is, again, standard leagues. So yeah, let me know what you think of this format. If you like it, I'll keep with it. If not, I'll switch over to something else. Just let me know what you think. So running back 1, running back 2. So his running back 1 is McCaffrey, and you have to play McCaffrey even though he's playing the Rams because, again, like, this is a feature point of their offense. They're going to get him involved either way, and he's good enough that he could still take off against a good defense. So you start Christian McCaffrey. The other running backs he's got Devonta Freeman, Miles Sanders, Latavius Murray, LaShawn McCoy, and Tony Pollard. So Tony Pollard, no, that's more of just handcuff value. Miles Sanders, don't do that because he's a rookie running back on a team that likes to use a committee. See how that develops. Latavius Murray, I would not do that either because that's a goal line play. So Devonta Freeman against Minnesota or LaShawn McCoy against Jacksonville. That's a tough one because Minnesota is a good run defense, but I would go with Freeman because he's going to get the bulk of the touches over McCoy for now. I can see McCoy being a little slow to get integrated into that system. I don't see him adjusting necessarily right away. I could see them using Damian Williams early on, or even Darwin Thompson to some degree. So I would go with Devonta Freeman as that second running back start over LaShawn McCoy, Latavius Murray, and among others. Next one. So let's go to wide receiver. So he's got Mike Evans, Tyler Boyd, Tyler Lockett, who he currently has in as his flex, Tyrell Williams, John Brown, and Paul Richardson. So don't do Paul Richardson. Again, like Washington, I want to see how that develops first. John Brown is very interesting to me, and actually Tyrell Williams is too, especially if it's looking like Antonio Brown won't play. So Mike Evans, I would start because he's playing San Francisco, and they lost some receivers. He could draw Richard Sherman, but Richard Sherman's getting old. Not as good as he was. Tyler Boyd, Tyler Lockett, or Tyrell Williams. And that is an interesting one. And I would actually stick with Tyler Boyd and Tyler Lockett there because, again, AJ Green, his health is questionable. Tyrell Williams, though, I mean, I think that, I think with Oakland, if Antonio Brown doesn't play, I would look more into, the lines of Ryan Grant or Hunter Renfrow, those guys are pretty much universally on waivers over Tyrell Williams, because Tyrell Williams even when he was in Los Angeles Chargers, he was a down the field threat, long bomb touchdown. Good for standard leagues, but potentially could give you an absolute goose egg. So I would feel more comfortable going with two guys that are going to be a little more featured against defenses that are a little questionable in the secondary, and Tyler Boyd and Tyler Lockett. So I would do that. And yeah, so, but Tyrell Williams I think would be a good play if you were comparing him up against, I would rather do him over Paul Richardson. I probably would start John Brown over him though, because I think John Brown has good potential in actually I would go Tyrell Williams over John Brown and see how John Brown develops against the Jets. But yeah, let's take a look at another team here. Start and sit. So, the running backs here are Le'Veon Bell, Dalvin Cook, Sony Michel, who's in the flex, Jordan Howard, and yeah, so he's only got 4 running backs. So, Le'Veon Bell against Buffalo, you start because, you spent a high pick on him. I think that I don't really like that matchup necessarily, but I think that's decent play there. Dalvin Cook, I would still start against Atlanta. So again, the featured running back on that team. I would actually not start Sony Michel. I would take him out of your lineup. I would not do that as your flex. So basically, and I would not start Jordan Howard either. So this guy needs to get better running backs, first of all. But second of all, don't start either of those two players because those teams like using committees. I don't know how it's going to work against two defenses that are good. Washington and Pittsburgh. So the receivers he's got are Adam Thielen, T.Y. Hilton, and that's tough. And then he's got Will Fuller, Deshaun Jackson, Chris Conley. Don't do Chris Conley because he's new on the Jags. I want to see what his role is first before I start him. Deshaun Jackson against Washington, I think that's also risky. I don't really like T.Y. Hilton against the Chargers because I think he's probably going to draw Casey Hayward and probably put up a bad game. But, he's an explosive player that has a lot of potential when he's healthy. So I think it's not ideal, but in the order I would rank them, I'd rank Thielen as my first. I would actually rank Will Fuller next over T.Y. Hilton. And then I would, in the flex, put T.Y. Hilton. And then, yeah, so I would not do that personally because I think that, I would rather not start T.Y. Hilton, but compared to the options that he has, I would go with T.Y. in your flex. So some of the other players that I saw brought up there, I would start D.D. Westbrook over T.Y. Hilton with that Chiefs matchup. I would probably start Tyrell Williams right now over T.Y. Hilton with that just Antonio Brown situation. Darth helmet nonsense. So yeah. And I'm going to be getting to QBs and tight ends later, but more in the stream. So let's take a look at this last standard league team, and then we'll move on over to PPR. So, guy started David Montgomery. That didn't go well for him. So now he's got one running back, Philip Lindsay. His other flex is Matt Breida. I would get him out of your flex. I'm just telling you that. But his other running backs are Peyton Barber and Justin Jackson. And Kalen Ballage. So take Matt Breida out. I know he's playing Tampa Bay, but I could see Tevin Coleman taking more touches. Put Justin Jackson in over Matt Breida because there's higher touchdown potential. He's playing a better defense, but Justin Jackson is going to get a lot of those early down carries. I like his opportunity more than what Matt Breida could give you against the Bucs, personally. But I would still start Philip Lindsay as your top running back. So I'd go Lindsay, then I would go Jackson, then Barber, then Breida, and then Ballage at the end because Ballage has just looked terrible so far. And then receivers, so Juju, you have to start Juju. Wide receivers next, so Christian Kirk, A.J. Green, who's not going to play, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who is And he's all right for PPR, but not really for standard. But he's locked in the bench. And then Cole Beasley and Deshaun Hamilton. So for standard leagues, that's a tough one. So for a standard league, I would keep Justin Jackson in at flex. I like him more than those receiving options. I would go personally with Juju as your top receiver, and then as your secondary receiver, I would continue with Christian Kirk against that Detroit defense. And because I think he's going to have the most familiarity with the NFL so far. And I think he could emerge as the top target, even ahead of Larry Fitzgerald. Cole Beasley, I think if you're in a PPR league, I would start Cole Beasley over Christian Kirk. Same thing with Deshaun Hamilton, but with both of them fall under a Christian Kirk because of the matchup there, or because of the format of the league being standard. So let's move over to PPR. So in this PPR matchup here, so I'll do this for a few minutes and then I'll switch over and talk real quick some streams, quarterbacks, tight ends, defenses, and that I like and that I don't like. So running backs in PPR, Alvin Kamara, running back 1, you have to start him every game. Derrick Henry. Okay, so that's an example of a guy you start in a standard league, but against Cleveland, which is an improved defense, I would take him out preferably. Let's see who else he has. Darrell Henderson, Damian Harris. Man, that's brutal. I would not want to start Derrick Henry at all, ideally, but considering those 2 other running backs you have on your bench, this guy needs to pick up somebody else that's available. And maybe if he could get for PPR, try to get Dare Ogunbowale or however you say his name for the Bucks. That might be better value than Derrick Henry, to be honest. Unless he can get a touchdown for you, but I just don't see that team moving the ball at all against Cleveland. I see Derrick Henry as a bust this week. So yeah, but Derrick Henry over those 2 though, because Darrell Henderson's not there yet. Damian Harris is on the Patriots. Wide receivers. So Mike Evans in PPR, yes. Julian Edelman in PPR. Yeah, you do that because I think that they're going to be using Edelman a lot more earlier on. Other receivers that are in there in the mix are Cooper Kupp is in his flex. Sterling Shepard, Christian Kirk, Tyrell Williams, and that's it. So I really like Sterling Shepard for this week. I would rate him over Julian Edelman personally. I would say that the order that I would rank this guy's receivers for this week that I like: Mike Evans against San Francisco, number 1. Number 2, I like Sterling Shepard. Number 3, because Sterling Shepard is going to be the only receiver because Golden Tate is suspended and Corey Coleman tore his ACL, so they're just going to be going solely to him and Evan Ingram mostly, who he has as his tight end, but I would still start both of them because those guys are going to get a lot of receptions in PPR from Eli Manning. And then I'd start Julian Edelman flex. The next receiver I would go in that order is Dante Pettis against Tampa Bay, Tyrell Williams, then Dante Pettis, then Christian Kirk is how I would rank them after that. So the next team, this guy's name is Team Sucks. Why would you name your team that? It's just such a negative mentality, man. All right, so his running back is James Conner. In PPR, you start him. He's a good PPR back. Sony Michel, I would try to get him out. His other running backs are Dion Lewis. Man, okay, you got to have more than 3 running backs on your roster. That's probably why you name your team Sucks. I mean, not to be mean to you, but you got to do better than that. Drop Mitch Trubisky after this game, or Darren Waller, the tight end of Oakland. That's not a good pickup. All right, so I would start Dion Lewis over Sony Michel. Tennessee's going to be down. They're going to be throwing it a lot. Sony Michel, I don't know what he's going to look like against Pittsburgh. So wide receivers, he's got DeAndre Hopkins. You have to start him. Alshon Jeffrey is his other receiver, and so is Robbie Anderson. But Robbie Anderson currently dealing with an injury. Will Fuller, Curtis Samuel, Corey Davis. I don't like Corey Davis. I would leave him out of the roster. I think Alshon Jeffrey is also... If he's healthy, like, he's supposedly questionable, but, like... So go DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller. I know you got 2 Texans, but, like, that team is going to be having to throw a lot. And against the Saints, it's going to be a shootout. And then I would then, after that, go Alshon Jeffrey. And then if, for some reason, Alshon Jeffrey can't play, then you would bump up Curtis Samuel next. Because that, and then I would say then Corey Davis and Robbie Anderson, because Robbie Anderson just recently got hurt. I'm not sure how that's going to look for him. Last team, and then we'll move over to my quick streams. So I hope this is helpful. It's kind of hard to get through all of it in the amount of time that I have to talk in these videos. But then again, if you want your start and sit comparison, like of what you want, I will make a video before the games start Sunday, and then that way you can have your questions answered. So this guy is running back 1 is David Johnson against Detroit. I'm not a biggest fan of that, but I would still start him there. Mark Ingram against Miami. I would start that. I think this is the ideal time for Mark Ingram to actually have a good game. Other running backs he's got on his team is Giovanni Bernard and Matt Breida. And I would sit both those players. I would probably put one of his receivers that he's got into that flex instead of Matt Breida. His wide receiver is Juju, and you play Juju. Tyler Boyd, I think you have to play him there. Ideally, this guy should have played like... he could have put Martez Valdez-Scantling in over Breida. I think that he's going to have a better game than he did, even though he didn't play all that well. But for the flex, you're competing with Matt Breida, Michael Gallup, Jamison Crowder, Valdez-Scantling, Adam Humphries, Mecole Hardman, and Giovanni Bernard. So the one that you would put in the flex and that I would personally do is Adam Humphries in a PPR league, because I think Adam Humphries is going to catch a lot of passes. He's probably going to put up a game where he's got like 8 catches for like 40 yards or something like that, and something like the Tariq Cohen game today. But that gives you something at your flex that I think is decent value. So Adam Humphries, I would go over those players personally. Michael Gallup, not too high on yet. Jamison Crowder, I'm just not high on in general. Mecole Hardman, need to see what he's like. Matt Breida, backfield's too crowded. All right, so we got a few minutes left. Let's go through the start and sits from stream level QBs, tight ends, defenses. So quarterbacks that I like, Josh Allen against New York. New York has had a couple defensive injuries so far. I think Josh Allen also gives you a lot of rushing value. I would start Josh Allen over somebody like Cam Newton, for example, who's dealing with an injury. It's not sure exactly what he's going to look like, especially against a team like the Rams, like who's got a very good defense. I would sit Cam Newton over somebody like Josh Allen. So let's say that you in the wake of Andrew Luck's injury, you just picked up Jacoby Brissett. I actually don't like Jacoby Brissett this week because they're playing the Chargers, which is a good defense. And Jacoby Brissett, I want to see like what he does in this offense before I really elevate him up to the start position anyway, because he wasn't necessarily a great quarterback in 2017. So I would start a guy like Jared Goff going up against a bad Carolina Panthers pass defense, or a guy like Matthew Stafford who's going up against an Arizona defense without Patrick Peterson. Other guys, so Nick Foles, yes, he's playing the Kansas City Chiefs, which is not a great defense, but Nick Foles adjusting to a new offense, not in Doug Peterson's system anymore. I want to see what Nick Foles does. So I would rather start personally somebody along the lines of Jimmy Garoppolo going up against a bad Tampa Bay defense. Jimmy Garoppolo could have a lot of really good value in this game. I see that game being a shootout. I like Jimmy Garoppolo more. And then let's say you pick up Andy Dalton because you heard that the Seahawks defense isn't as good anymore, and you thought it'd be a good idea to pick him up because it's like, oh, he was good like 3 years ago, right? Well, I hope you're not thinking that. I would rather honestly start a guy like Joe Flacco because he's playing the Oakland Raiders defense, which is just not a very good defense. I know that this had some good preseason games, but Joe Flacco I see in this game having some pretty good value there. So tight ends. Well, so let's say that you took Eric Ebron really high in the draft, and you're banking on him going back to his 2018 success. So I would sit Eric Ebron for a guy like Will Disley, who is playing the Cincinnati Bengals. In Seattle, Will Disley had some very good games, whereas Eric Ebron, he's going to be splitting touches with Jack Doyle. I don't know what he's going to look like. I would rather go with a stream-worthy option like Disley that you can get out of waivers. Another guy I would start, so Jordan Reed. I hope you didn't draft him at all because he's already dealing with an injury, which is just classic Jordan Reed. I would start a guy like Blake Jarwin playing the New York Giants as a tight end that has decent rapport with Dak Prescott and could be a good stream-worthy option there. And then another guy, Jordan Thomas of the Texans playing the New Orleans Saints. There could be a lot of potential points there as well. I'd start him. I would start him, but I would also maybe consider sitting a guy like Delaney Walker, who is just the Titans' offense just is not looking very good, and that Browns defense looks improved. So real quick, some defenses that I like: Seattle, Philadelphia, and Denver are good stream options this week, but I would sit teams like Jacksonville, New England, and Houston. And then some kickers that I would like as stream options are Mike Badgley for the Chargers, Matt Gay, or I don't know what his first name is. His last name's Gay. He plays for the Buccaneers. Good shootout opportunity, and then Chris Boswell for the Steelers. So yeah, let me know what you think of this video. Feel free to comment and share your start-sit comparisons you want me to talk about, and I will talk about that before Sunday. So thanks for watching. Bye.